don't text and drive. Now don't be the very best and drive. Of course, there's always people who ignore these warnings and are distracted drivers anyways. A group of Baltimore police officers were standing outside their patrol vehicle and chatting while on off time. A car traveling down the road suddenly sideswipes their patrol car at such a high speed that the car literally is lifted onto the curb. The officers caught up with the car, which came to a stop a little further down the road. The driver got out and explained that he was playing Pokemon Go and quote, "That's what I get for playing this dumbass game." Luckily, no one was in the patrol car, and no one in the driver's car was hurt either. As if it even needs to be said, this is a great example of exactly what can happen when you aren't paying attention to the road. It could have been much worse. Number 6, player gets hit by a car. Here is an even better example of what can happen if you play Pokemon Go without paying attention to your surroundings. A 15-year-old from Pittsburgh was hit by a car on the highway because she wasn't aware of her surroundings as she played the virtual game. She was trying to catch a specific Pokemon, and the path she had to take led her across a 4-lane intersection when she was struck by a vehicle. She blamed the game for placing the Pokemon in a location that she had to use a road to access. And her mother also blamed the game for getting kids out into the world and the streets. According to an investigation, there was a clear intersection where the teen crossed, but it's uncertain if she simply didn't check before walking or if the car was unable to see her. This is another lesson in being more careful while playing the game, using the buddy system, and of course always looking both ways before you cross the street. This is also a great lesson to parents that have young teens or children playing the game. Either don't let them out into the world alone, or be sure they're aware of certain safety precautions. Whether you're the player, the driver, or just in the midst of the game, we should all be more careful while on the road catching Pokemon. Number 5, a drug deal. This game has spread like some kind of amazing plague. People are out and about playing and having a great time, meeting new people, and even breaking down social barriers. Reddit user Sloth of Doom shared a pretty strange yet pretty cool story of just how this game is changing the world a little bit at a time. Apparently, Sloth was unable to sleep one night, so he decided to go for a late night walk and catch some Pokemon. It was about 3 in the morning when he came across 2 other men playing the game. They gave him some great insight on a great Pokemon nearby, and then the group sat on the street and just talked for about an hour. A cop eventually pulled up and accused the 3 of them of being involved in a drug deal. In Sloth of Doom's original post, he stated, quote, "Yeah, so it turns out 2 20-something black dudes and a 40-year-old white guy chilling in the park at 3 a.m. looks strange. It took a bit of talking to convince the cop we weren't doing a drug deal, and a bit longer to explain the game. Not only did the cop let them off without running their names or searching them, he also asked how he could download the game because he was apparently very interested in playing. With all of the cop-related controversy happening in the US, it's nice to know that virtual creatures are bringing everyone together even if it's just a little. Number 4, the robberies. One of the most talked about shocking things to happen in relation to this game are the robberies. People have been setting up lures or incense either at Pokestops, gyms, or in unrelated sketchy locations to get players to flock to the area, where they are then robbed. This has happened several times in different regions, but one of the most memorable has been in the town of O'Fallon, Missouri. 4 teens aged 16 to 18 set up lures in dark alleys and deserted parking lots where they then committed armed robberies against unsuspecting players. Up to 11 robberies were committed by the teens and a handgun was found in the vehicle they used, most likely their weapon of choice for threatening the players. The teens faced charges in relation to the robberies, and everyone interested in the game was taught to be cautious about lures in odd areas, and again to travel with a friend or in small groups. If you see a lure set up behind a sketchy corner store, it's probably best just to avoid the area. While this game is fun and addictive, it certainly isn't worth your personal belongings, finances, or especially your life. Number 3, players fall off a cliff. Perhaps one of the most severe cases of players not being aware of where they're going or what they're doing comes from the story of 2 friends in Enchiladas, California. The 2 men were playing the game while walking when they somehow became so distracted that they fell off a 50 to 90 foot cliff. Several feet before approaching the cliff were signs that read "No trespassing" and "Do not cross," probably to keep wanderers away from the dangers of the cliff. Despite these warnings, and despite the warning mentioned at the start of the game to be cautious, the two men still fell. Firefighters arrived on the scene to hoist the players up and carry them to a local hospital where they were treated for minor injuries. This could have of course been much worse, but playing a game so avidly that you miss warnings of a cliff is pretty extreme. While the game does call for a lot of attention to the phone, there are always ways to play carefully, and there's always the option of playing in moderation and sticking to areas you're familiar with. Granted, the point of the game is to get out and explore, but that doesn't always mean putting yourself in dangerous situations or settings. Number 2. Man stabbed while catching them all. 21-year-old Michael Baker was playing the game around 1 a.m. earlier this month. He explained that he was obsessed with the game as a child and is just as dedicated and involved with the revival of this beloved game. He was playing so late at night due to his determination to catch them all. A man walked by and he simply asked if the man was also playing the game. For unknown reasons, the man pulled out a knife and quickly sliced Baker's shoulder before running off without saying much. Although Baker seemed to think that the man, quote, wanted to battle, he also said that he didn't immediately go to the hospital because he still wanted to spend some time catching Pokemon, and he didn't think the wound was that severe. When he finally did go to the ER, he was treated with 8 stitches. Although his wound wasn't that serious, it's still unsettling to think that someone could handle the pain of a stab wound just for the sake of capturing Pokemon. In the news report, Baker stated, quote, "I gotta catch 'em all." He apparently wants to be the first person to truly catch them all in the game. Number 1. Teen finds dead body. Of course, we've saved the best and creepiest for last. 19-year-old Shayla Wiggins dove right into the hype of the game as everyone else did, dedicating her first day to catching about 50 Pokemon. On her second day of playing, she decided to explore the Bing Wind River near her home to find a water Pokemon. She traveled quite far from home before realizing where she was. Shayla didn't come to a stop until she found what she was looking for and smelled a strong pungent scent. As she finally saw where she was, she also saw a corpse. She was apparently standing pretty close to it when she finally came to a stop and noticed the smell. She immediately ran from the scene and called 911. When police arrived, she led them to the body, which was believed to either be a homeless or mentally ill man that drowned in the river and washed up on shore, and had been dead for at least 3 days at the time his corpse was discovered. More details on the man's identity and the nature of his death were never released, but Shayla's mother did report that her daughter was doing better after a few days and is still actively playing the game. Shayla also reported that while she knows she would have never been in that area if it weren't for the game, she was oddly thankful that she was able to help discover this body, as the man's family had probably been worried and searching for at least several days. So while this story is pretty unsettling due to a rotting corpse being involved, it's also a pretty happy ending because otherwise the man's body may have never been found.